Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Usman. I'm from class C. This video was meant to fulfill the text of error analysis courses. Here, I wanted to present my mini research with the title An Analysis of Lexical Error in English Analytical Expositions Writing Produced by the 10th grade students of SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh in EFL Classroom. Right. The first one is chapter one. Chapter one is the background of the study. In Indonesia, students are taught to be able to writing as one of the four language skill in learning English based upon the 2006 institution-based curriculum such as speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills. According to nations, says that writing is activity that can usefully be prepared for the other skill of listening, speaking, and reading. It is believed to the most difficulty and important skill of learning for language students. According English students, according to Ken, writing is complex activity. In addition, vocabulary is also an important component in language and basis of language teaching. According to statement of the David Wilkins in Thornbury, concluding the importance of the vocabulary in learning, which states without the grammar, very little can be confused, conveyed. Without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. Therefore, in terms of writing, students must state their ideas and ideas clearly, and use good and appropriate lexical choices to avoid leader and misunderstanding about the contents of writing they have made. However, the vocabulary of the target language is very different from the vocabulary of the mother tongue, which cause students to make vocabulary error, which usually call it lexical error. According to Duley, Burr, and Krasens, there are several types of error based on the linguistic categories, and one of them is lexical error. In this study, the researcher will focus on the research to analyze lexical error in a student's writing text, because lexical items are important things that students must know in preparing a good and interesting writing work of courses. This lexical error usually occurs because a foreign language learner do not have adequate knowledge of English vocabulary. This usually happen because of the lack of motivations and interest of students in reading book, lack of awareness to enrich the understanding of new vocabulary. And then the next is problem formulations. Based on the explanations before, the problems of this research was formulated as follows. First one is what types of lexical error made by the 10 grade students of SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh in writing analytical expressions text, and then number two is how is the percentage of each lexical error made by the 10 grade SMA of SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh in writing analytical expression text. And then number three is what is the most common lexical error found in writing analytical expressions of expression text of the 10 grade students of SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh. And then next is about the purpose of the research. The purpose of this research are to describe the types of lexical error made by the 10th grade students of SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh in writing analytical expression text. And then number two is to know the percentage of each lexical error made by the 10th grade students of SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh in writing analytical expression text. And then number three is to know the most common lexical error found in writing analytical expression of the 10 grade students in SMA 1 Bangun Lumpuh. Okay, next chapter 2. A concept of error and mistake. Before starting this error analysis research, we must first distinguish the concept between error and mistake. According to Brown, a mistake in a performance mention a performance error in that it is a learner's failure to uh, utilize Kano process exactly a patch and error. Patch and error are in conceptions. It's noticeable. These degredations from the adult grammar of a native talker, reflecting in the interlanguage potency of the presentist. It can be concluded that an error can occur because of the speaker lack of conceptions. On the other hand, if a mistake occurs in a performance, the speaker knows the correct system and is likely to be able to correct the mistake himself. And then next is a lexical error. Definition of lexical error. According to Lech, lexical error is the use of lexical items which is not appropriate in a particular context as a result of a conscience of confusion between the two words because of the formal or semantic similarities which a conscience of the influence of a first language and second language. In addition, the boundary between the lexical error and grammatical error is still unclear and still vague due to the complexity of lexical error. The sources of the problem in distinguishing between the lexical and grammatical error may be stem from the difficulties in describing the words themselves. And then next is lexical error classifications. The classification of lexical error in this study was taken from Carl James taxonomy of lexical error. This study adapted lexical error taxonomy proposed by Carl James, who divides lexical error in a well-ordered list based on the two major types of lexical error, and also give the detailed explanations for each type of lexical error. Carl James classifies lexical error into two main categories. They are formal and semantic features. The first one is formal error. James classification formal error into three types: formal misselections, formal misformations, and disformations. And then semantic error. James classifies semantic error into two types: confusion of sense relations and collections error. Next is concept of writing. First one is the natural of writing. In the writing, we are required to be able to present ideas or opinions in producing a good and interesting writing. There are several exclusive definitions given for hiring specialists in writing. Murcia stated that writing is the capacity to share their ideas via the writing way in the great language. Writing is a way to categorize something in writing and requires a long technique during writing. Ordinary people who are not used to writing, let alone writing English, need to increase their reading or literature in order to add science. Science into new vocabulary and choose the right word and are also pleasant, pleasant to read. And then next is the process of writing. Hammer state that here a four stage of a process of writing. Thus, the planning, drafting, editing, and then the final versions. And then next is concept of analytical expositions. And the first one is the definition of analytical exposition text. According to Anderson's, analytical exposition text is a type of text in intended, intended to convince the reader that something must happen. Analytical exposition is a type of oral or written text which uses a text that describes the author ideas about the phenomenon or cause which which is intended to convince listener or reader about the case. Okay. Next, chapter 3. The first one is research designs. Research designs. This research employs descriptive qualitative method. The designs of this research is descriptive research because it describes the lexical error made by the 10th grade students of SMA 1 Lumpu in writing analytical exposition text, as stated in the research objective in the previous chapter. According to MC Milan says that descriptive studies simply describes phenomenon. And then next is research subject. The participants of this study were high school students of class 10 SMA 1 Lumpu for the academic years 2020 and 2021, totaling 24 students. They consist of 12 boys and 12 girls. The age of these students are almost the same, and then their age range from 60 to 70 years. In addition, these students study in the same class, which is randomly selected from the number of the classes in the class of 10 SMA 1 Menumpu, SMA 1 Menumpu. They are divided into 6 different classes. Each class consists of 30 until 35 students. And then next is data collections and instrument. Researcher get the data from the students' writing tasks in writing analytical exposition tasks, and then there are 20 writing of analytical exposition tasks based upon the title given by the researcher. The learning material for this task is an analytical exposition text, and the English teacher has taught the learning material to the students. The content of the task was prepared based upon the 2030 curriculum for senior high school, and it had been consulted with the English teacher before the task was given to the respondent. The respondent were assigned to write an analytical expositions to analyze text by choosing one of a title given by the researcher. This writing task was not conducted to measure the students' writing ability and writing analytical exposition text, and then this task is socially to find lexical error found in students' writing. Therefore, the writing text was given to obtain data about the students' lexical error in writing analytical exposition text. Other types of error found in are ignored and not counted. And then the writing text is done in 1 hours. And then next is research procedure. This study, the researcher used the procedure suggested by Corder in Ellis and by Quinzen to conduct error analysis research. First, the researcher collect the data for error analysis from research, research respondents through a writing task in the from in the from in the form of 20 uh, analytical exposition writings that had previous been writing by class 10 students of SMA 1 Kuala Lumpur. The students will be asked to write an analytical exposition text with a of the uh, of at least 30 30 300 words using the help of dictionary and within 1 hours by the considering on one writing title from two main themes that have been determined by the researcher. They are the importance of wearing the mask when outside house and the dangers of flattering. And then in seconds, read carefully all the students' analytical exposition writing. The researcher identified lexical error that all the students might make in their analytical exposition text writing test. And then lexical error found in 20 written text will then be classified into uh, 40 40 40 subtypes of lexical error from the total number of subtypes lexical error. And then lexical error produced by James. In these steps, the researcher reads the student's work, identify lexical error, and the researcher highlight the marks the word indicate as lexical error based on lexical error classification given by James. And then the researcher give a signs by giving a color to each of this error. Each error method will be given a different color to make it easier to distinguish its color. And then the next steps that the researcher will take is describe the types of lexical error made by the students based upon the tabulation of available data. After identifying the lexical error made by students, to facilitate this, the researcher will create the table to describe the result of tabulation of data on lexical error made by students. Then the researcher explained carefully the error that were classified into 6 types of lexical error that have been identified. And then the researcher will provide an explanation for each type of lexical error based on the main error types and the sources of the error. And finally, the researcher will try to evaluate the lexical error that have been made by the students. In this case, it involves decisions to determining which one should resize more introductions based on the criticality of each type of lexical error, and which one should recite fewer instructions. The researcher will try to analyze why there are certain types of lexical error that students make the most and the fewest. And then the researcher tried to use the following calculation for formula, which was adapted from Haley to calculate the result of the data tabulations. Okay, the next chapter is chapter 4, research findings and discussions. The first one is findings. Based on the data, the researcher found two main types of lexical error consisting of 11 subtypes of formal error and 3 subtypes of semantic error. The following table presents the distribute of lexical error according to the types and subtypes found in the analytical expression writing of 10 grades of SMA and SMA Negeri 1 Kuala Lumpur, Lumpur. And then interpretations of the data. Based on the research, formal error is the highest error that is often found in the student's analytical expression writing. Uh, in addition, the result of the study on the productions of the formal error arises an important problem where most students seems to have a quite serious problem in determining the correct form of lexical items. In addition, errors that have been classified as a formal error mostly arise from the intralingual transfer and intralingual error. Uh, Based on the result of the research that based on the result of the research that researchers have done. Uh, Most of students of SMA in Kota Lumpur have acquired complex problems in determining which word classes are correct from lexical items because of the influence of intralingual error. And then other problems that seems to occur in students' analytical expression writing due to intralingual error uh, are the use of inappropriate suffix or prefix to check the correct word class of lexical items. There's the spelling of lexical items incorrectly due to the additions of or deletions of one item in the form of the good one word, and there is wrong analogy that might influence students in determining the plural and the plural form of lexical items among several subtypes of formal error that must alter core calca subtypes of formal error. And the most common lexical error in the students and the student writing in analytical expression. The number of error that occur in Calca is 105 error with a percentage of 60% of the total error. And then the last subtypes is coinage, which is one error with a percentage of 0.3% of the total error. Although the main problem faced by students in lexical error stems from intralingual error, the emerge of a calca in students' analytical expressions show that the important problem of the most students also have a problem in transmitting their ideas into their writing compositions because of the influence of the existence of first limits. However, students seem to have a limited vocabulary mastery skill, and the target limit is that the variations of the same word in students' writing are less varied. Furthermore, the result of this study indicate that the semantic error are the most rare error found in students' analytical expression writing, which is only a 7.3 error. Uh, in addition, the result of lexical error in semantic error revealed that the error in using wrong near synonym were the most common error in semantic error, namely 55 error in them with the percentage of 50% point to 28% of the total error. And then the smallest error in the semantic error is using supernym for hyponym with the total for error with a percentage of 1.11%. This result seems to be similar to the result of the previous studies, such as that of Hamqua and Smith, which result where the use of inappropriate synonym was also the most common error in semantic error. In addition, the semantic error found in students' analytical expositions text come from the intralingual error. In general, the researcher can conclude that the most of a lexical error found in an analytical exposition text of uh, kelas 10 students of SMA 1 Manumpu uh, to be influenced by intralingual error. And then a student's problem in lexical error that come from the intralingual error or intralingual transfer that may have a relationship with the portions of teacher vocabulary in English subject during the teaching and learning process in the classroom. And then the next is discussions. Based on the above phenomenon, the researcher suggests that in teacher vocabulary, it is necessary for a student as a way to minimize lexical error in their written confusions. Therefore, by teaching vocabulary, the teacher can indirectly help the students to expand the web of the vocabulary they have. And then the use of English dictionaries during the teaching learning process seems to act as an effective tool for students in helping to eliminate their problem in terms of lexical error. And then in this case, the teacher must be able to train and educate students seriously to use the English dictionary effectively. And then the use of remediations during the teaching and learning process seems suitable to be able to minimize a student's lexical error. With these remediations, it is expected to be able to assist students in revising their mental response representations of the linguistic rules they use, so the students can understand their spoken or writing utterances as error. And this error is expected not to be repeated in the future. And then in addition, the teacher can direct students into the class discussions where it hope it that students will recognize their mistake during their conversations with their classmate and teacher, or even when they make some error in writing written conversations. Right. The last is chapter 5. First is conclusions. The result of this study revealed that there are two main types of lexical error, namely formal error and semantic error. Semantic error found in the student's analytical exposition writing, and then with a total number of lexical error is 360 errors. Based on the result of the data analysis and the discussions of the students' analytical exposition writing, it can be concluded that among 30 subtypes of formal error and 3 subtypes of semantic error, the most common lexical error found in the students' analytical exposition writing text were calque, which amounted to 105 errors, or 29.60%, and then misselections error with 68 error, or 80.88%, and then overclusion error with 30 error, or 8.33%, and then suffix types specific types with 20, uh, uh, 27 error or 7.6 7.57 percent error, and then an omission error 25 or 6.84%, and then a consonant based types 9 error or or 2.5%, and then a borrowing error with 9 error or 2.5%, and then file based types 5 error or 1.39%, and then prefix types for error or 1.1%, and then miscoding error for or 1.11 11%, and then coinage error 1 error or 0.3%, and then using supernym for a hyponym for error or 1.11%, using it in appropriate cohyponyms error, and 40 14 14 14 error or 3.80 uh, 89%, using word near synonym error 55 error or 50%, 50.28%. Thus, the probably sources of this error is an interlingual error resulting from negative first unit transfer. On the other hand, based on the main classifications of lexical error, formal error are the highness error that often appear in the student analytical exposition writing. The occurrence of a formal error may have something to do with the student's main problem. In addition, the researcher found the most of the formal error that occurred in the student's writing were influenced by intralingual error. And then next is suggestions. Therefore, the result of this study suggests that the teaching vocabulary is needed by students to help them eliminate a number of lexical error that may be found in their writing compositions. In addition, the use of a monolingual English dictionary or the applications of remediations during the teaching and the learning process in the classroom can be solutions for a teacher to be able to assist students in minimizing their problem in terms of lexical errors, so that the future they will be better in writing.